Mesdames et messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, veuillez accueillir, please welcome Patrick Pelata, Andreas Mai, en conversation avec, in conversation with Kevin Tynan.
Well, good to be here at Moovin'on. Remind me to get the furniture moving number to these. And I think those people are still on the floor, so. Great to be here. Thank you for joining us. A lot of presentations during the week, and I'm pretty sure over the next 30 minutes, we've got it figured out. We've been talking for a while. And I want to start with Patrick. Long career at Renault-Nissan. Auto industry, seen a lot of things, a lot of changes, innovation in the industry. Tell us, in your mind, and what you do every day, the problem, and then take us to the end. Give us your transportation, your mobility utopia, and then we'll work backwards from there.
Thank you, Kevin. Hi, everybody. The problem is simple. It's an old problem. Cities are clogged with traffic, with cars. There's a lot of pollution. The health of people is at stake. Too much noise. The streets are covered by cars, not by bicycles or pedestrians, and so on. So this is an old problem. What's new is two things. The Uber, Lyft, and Didi in China have shown us that there are other ways to do mobility in cities on demand. And this is very successful. It creates other problems, but it shows that there is a strong need that what we have today is not good enough. And second is autonomous driving is coming. Google has been leading the way there, like almost 9 years ago, starting to do it. And we see now that it's coming, and it's coming soon. Yesterday, Google ordered 62,000 cars on top of the 20,000 they are already ordered from Jaguar. Now it's from Fiat Chrysler to do what I call robotaxi. Cars without a driver that can transport people from one point to another point, eventually on a ride sharing. So these two things allow us to completely transform mobility in cities. What could be the vision then? Well, it's hard because many players, a lot of people will decide or not decide, so it's hard to see, but some people did simulations. One of them, probably the most famous, is from the International Transportation Forum, was made on Barcelona, then they did it on the Helsinki, Finland, Auckland, New Zealand. They are doing one in an American city. And what this simulation is showing is if a city was saying no more private cars, eventually no more big buses, but robotaxi in ride sharing, electric in the city, what could that do? Well, what could that do is for exactly the same trips as of today, you could have 10 times less cars traveling. You could have 15 times less cars parked on the streets. They would be electric, so you would have no pollution. They would be autonomous, so there would be much less accidents, maybe still some, but much less accidents. Would be silent. The streets would be then open for pedestrian, bicycles, cafe, terrace, or trees. The mobility could go down in cost, very flexible, everything, a lot of things on demand. By the way, that would add on traditional heavy public transport, because that would increase the demand for them with what we call feeders. So this is a very, very deep transformation. Now, this is where it could go. What nobody knows now is how do we go from where we are today to that place. And I think that can be a a good part of our discussion today.
Well, I'll just take it that someday I might actually enjoy going into Manhattan, right, from New Jersey, that I actually look forward to that because it's absolutely dreadful now. Andreas, same thing to you. Where are we with this problem that you think about every day? What is your ultimate utopia? And I'm not going to ask you how we get there just yet, but what are you envisioning?
Yeah. So I think listening to this conference and also looking at what I'm interested in, it's always easy to say, hey, autonomous is going to be the silver bullet, or mobility as a service is going to solve all of our problems. But if we look at what happened in New York, where we had some of these e-hailing companies, not to name names, come to the city, and suddenly the traffic comes to a halt. Yeah, so this idea that robo-taxis are going to solve all of our problems, and we just need to click on our app and we will get where we want to be, I think is not going to happen. I think the New York case is evidence for this.
Give us some of the numbers in New York then.
Sorry?
Some of the numbers. Talk about what has happened in New York since.
So essentially, the amount of people that could take advantage of this service has increased tremendously. I think Patrick mentioned the number 37, was it?
Yeah,
37%?
I can come back on that. A study has been made with New York is a very special city for numbers because
it's special,
they on many things, but it's the only city, to my knowledge, maybe also in China, that has asked to any taxi or Uber or Lyft or Via or whoever to give the numbers of where they pick people, where they deliver the people. And what they have been showing is between 2013 and 2017, just 4 years, the number of trips made by taxi and the Uber and Lyft and so on has been up by 37%. The mileage done by these cars has been up by 60%. The total time spent in the streets by these same cars has been up by 96%, double. And the result of that is the average speed in Manhattan and around went down by 15%. And this, everybody pays for it,
Yeah.
even people that own their car inside their car. So that cannot go on like that.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying Uber is fulfilling a need.
Right.
But the city now needs to do something.
Yeah, and this is a little bit of the problem that we need to solve. I think just by putting more cars, maybe under a different business model, on our streets is not going to solve the problem of transportation. We need to provide transportation to all people, need to give access to also the underprivileged people in a city, and that is not going to happen with private robo-taxis. Yeah, so from my perspective, you need to look at it holistically. So the city needs to look at all aspects of transportation and needs to provide access in an easy way to all citizens to use all parts of the transportation system. And you talked about utopia. It's actually not utopia. In many cities in Europe, there are concepts where you pay $50 a month and you get access to all modes of transportation for 1 month, $50. Compare this to what we pay for our cars, and you can spend a lot of money on other nice things. Yeah? And yes, there needs to be an option to add mobility on demand, robo-taxis, but also bikes. Ferries are operated in Bordeaux, for instance, by one team of the city and a private operator, and it works very nicely. It actually has led to the fact that in Bordeaux, that had a mode share of 62% of kind of trips were done by cars. This has gone down to less than 50%, and I think that's the way we need to think. That's the way where we should go.
So what's the next step, right? Where do we go? Where do we go next? You know, I at Moovin'on this year, last year, and conferences, and we hear ideas people talk about all the time. But like you said, in the last 4 years, it's actually gotten worse in Manhattan. Where do we start to see the change, that it's noticeable, that, hey, you know what, getting in and out of a big city from the suburbs or moving around within the city is not as bad as it used to be?
So I agree with Andreas on the fact that you need to have a holistic view. of the whole modes of transportations. I really believe that robotaxi can play a very big role there in the end because of costs going down and autonomous and electric and so on. But heavy public transport, like the one that Keolis is doing on tramways and on railways and subways, will go up as well. This is the two. What will go down is private cars. And this is where the biggest problem is. To have this holistic view and to act on it, you need to have strong leadership in cities. And this is not always true. And to have a strong leadership, they need to know what they can do, and they need to kind of be able to foresee what their decisions could make in the transform the city once the technology is fully there, which is like 2, 3, 4, 5 years. We don't know exactly, but it's coming. And I think to be able to do this forecast, they need to have tools of simulations on the mobility of people, not just like today, it's like mechanics of fluids that are done in simulations. No, you need to do something much more refined, and then they can decide. Now, the next question is, after that, who are the players that can do that? So the Keolis, the Transdev, the private companies that do public transportation, the public transport authorities with the leadership of the cities. But now you can see that car makers want to be part of the game, and I think they can bring things to the game. Obviously, Google with Waymo, and Uber and Lyft and Didi in China, and many others in China, Baidu and so on, want to be part of the game. So what's not clear is how all that is going to fit in and do this revolution, transformation.
In my view, one of the biggest roadblocks that we see around the world is funding. Yeah, we can have the greatest ideas on the planet. If we do not have a way to pay for these ideas to make it happen, it's not going to happen. And particularly here in North America, I often see cities that simply don't have the means to invest in public transit, to invest in people who can then plan this holistic system of transportation and make the changes to the infrastructure, make the changes to the technology that is needed in a city to support all these great ideas. So I think funding is at the core of what we need to solve. A good example, some cities, or in France, for instance, they charge 3% on the payroll of companies. With the idea behind it, you have a company that needs to transport their people to the city from home and back. And if you then charge on the payroll, you can actually fund a transportation infrastructure that is necessary to move these many people. And this is really, is it just me hearing this?
No, it's not just
okay. That would be bad. No, and I think we need to be more creative to find these funding mechanisms that are missing right now. The other element is, as you said, strong leadership. I give you one example. I don't name the city, but there are some cities here in North America that have 85 public transit authorities, 85. And every single one of these public transit authority has a chief and a second in command, and assistants and many other people that help them do their job, and to convince somebody to give up their budget to pool the team to really look at a region's transportation system holistically requires a very, very strong leader that says, okay, this is what we are going to do, and we're all going to play together.
So is it partially about the business model? Is it proving profitability? Is there some other greater good that is causing this adoption to be slow? Because it seems we recognize the issues, right? We deal with them every day. In a lot of cities, they've gotten to the point where it's unbearable to try and move around or get in and out of. And we were talking about Detroit earlier, which is my favorite city, strangely enough. And it got to the point where there was nobody there. It was a ghost town. And now the renaissance in Detroit has been great. It's, it's a great place to go, and you wonder if it's because it just, was flattened and then could be built up with new stores, restaurants, technology, people. Is that what we're heading towards? Does it have to be torn down to the point?
Yeah, no, I think if you really look at the cities in this part of the world, they have been designed for cars.
Right.
And whereas in Europe, the cities had a longer history, they were designed for people because people in the beginning had to walk. That's why many of the cities in Europe are walkable. And I think we need to move towards more walkable cities, because wherever you go in the world, whenever you have the possibility to walk around and experience the city as a walking citizen, you have a better experience than if you're stuck in traffic, bumper to bumper, to get from point A to point B. And again, let me reference Bordeaux. We had the situation that we had 4 lines of vehicles in front of a World Heritage Site. The facade of Bordeaux is a World Heritage Site. 4 lanes in each direction. The facades were black 10 years ago, literally black from exhaust. Now we have public transit in front of those buildings. Cars don't have that high share anymore, and the facades are white. And it doesn't take much imagination what is happening to our lungs at the same time. Yeah? And I think we really need to rethink how we design cities and whether we can redesign them for the people that live there rather than the cars that drive.
Yeah, I would like a point on that. I think the street is a common good. It has a high value, and somebody needs to take care of that value. And the only ones that can do that is city leadership. And now for the fund, so it has a high value. The question is, how do we pay for these transformations? Who is going to... So I think heavy public transport is efficient, needs a lot of money. And that's why I think it needs to be complemented by things where you will have private investors coming in with good business model for them. And I think if you look at the funding, robotaxi is a liquid good. So it's easy. Car makers know how to do that. And Uber could do it, and Google could do it. So the question is more now how to allow this transformation to happen, and with which players. And if you look at the competencies, the capabilities that you need a platform like Uber, you need the technology of autonomous drive, you need the right cars. Cars good for ride sharing today don't exist. You need separate people so that they are fine and comfort, not bothered by the others, and so on. You need a field force. You need a plant to recharge these and clean them every night. And it's a plant, it's not just a small facility. And all that needs to be put together. And if you look at the competencies of Google or Uber, they have some of them, they don't have all of them. If you look at the competencies of Daimler car maker, they have some of them, not all of them. Keolis, Transdev, the public transport authorities as well, some of them, not all of them. These people will have to work together, and I think they will find the funding for this part of it. So the question is more how to start this road once the technology arrives, and what needs to be done before the technology is fully here.
Let's talk about some dirty little secrets, if you don't mind. So,
Well, I thought we weren't going to bring that up.
Yeah. No. If you look at our business in transit, so for every dollar that we need to operate public transit system in this continent, the taxpayer has to pay 67 cents. So only 33 cents is covered by what everybody who uses public transit pays for their ticket or for their subscription. So that's dirty little secret number 1. So it's more or less funded by the taxpayer. Dirty little secret number 2 is if you really add the societal cost of driving a car on top of what it costs per mile, I think it's 75 cents per mile that we bear out of our pockets. But if you add the cost of roads, of bridges, the cost of bad roads, you need new tires every once and again, and the cost of pollution, the cost of crashes, it actually doubles this. So we are talking about $1.50 per passenger mile we pay for driving our cars. And I think there is an urgent need that we accept that fact, because we are paying for it anyways, indirectly, and make it a more direct indicator for what is a smart choice in transportation. Yeah, so you have a smart price that you pay for using certain modes of transportation, and it may even be dynamic. Yeah, at morning time, you pay more if you decide to drive in your big SUV as one passenger and clock the roads. If you share it with others, if you share a robo-taxi, you may pay substantially less, or even less if you take the bus or the train.
So is it both then? Is it the solution is more cost effective for the individual, yet the penalty for not complying becomes more as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy in some way, because we then make the wrong decisions and we put more burden on the system to the detriment of all of us. And that's what I refer to as societal cost that we bear, but it's not made transparent in the price we pay for our good or bad decisions.
Right, and it's interesting, Patrick, coming from Renault-Nissan, where it's about putting more vehicles on the road, building and selling vehicles, and now what you're talking about is that we need to go the other direction, right? There's a lot of vehicles. We drove here, on the bus this morning, and the roads are just lined with not idling, but just idle vehicles. Nobody's in them. And it's how do we get people to a completely new thought process?
Yeah. So first, if I look at that viewpoint from a car maker, I mean, there has been a kind of earthquake in automotive industry when a study by Roland Berger, the consulting, came out by saying, well, we foresee that when robotaxi will be fully in cities and so on, the total volume of cars sold per year will go down by something like 30%, whatever it's 20 or 40. Let's just imagine that this is today sales basically is 100 million cars per year. 30% less is 30 million cars less. This is 100 automotive plants less in the world. So that's why car makers have started to say, okay, something is going to change. I need to be part of the new world. And Daimler, for example, invested more than 1 billion euros in My Taxi, Halo, Chauffeur Privé. Last week, a big company in Eastern Europe and so on, so they step in. GM is doing the same, Renault-Nissan is doing these things, Volkswagen is doing that too. So they are moving into this, and they come with big money. Again, yesterday, SoftBank, the big investor, fund,
Cruise automation.
the Japanese famous Mr. Son, invested more than $2 billion in the Cruise, which is a subsidiary, it was subsidiary of GM on autonomous drive. So the money is coming there. And car makers need to move from I build cars to I am part of this new value chain of transportation with shared robotaxi, because robotaxi with just one person in the stuff, except if the car is very small, is not the right solution. So I think this is coming, the big money is coming, but these people need to collaborate. Right. The Keolis of the world with the PTAs, the leadership of the cities, the car makers, and the Google or the Uber. Not everybody will be part of the game in the end, but they all need to go there now. And this is why I'm very optimistic about the fact that, yes, this is going to move on. Right. And this is not going to move on 20 years, but I think we'll have big implementations in China, in Singapore, in some Scandinavian cities, maybe in Boston or San Francisco or Austin, Texas, Columbus, and so on, that are working on this kind of stuff today.
Yeah. If I could make a wish, I would want us to be a little bit more creative in what types of vehicles we design. Yeah? So if we look at the vehicles that we drive today, the kind of 70% of times we drive alone. Now, the average occupancy is 1.1 person in vehicles that can carry 5 to 7 people. That's why we ship around 94% of empty weight. And that's why our fuel consumption is astronomical. At the same time, we built kind of big engines, but our vehicles drive, I think, less than 35 miles per hour for 86% of the time.
I try and go faster.
Yeah, and like if you look at this, yeah, these things are, I call it engineering delight. Yeah,
Right.
so somebody sat at the drawing board and created this great vehicle that we were kind of told we had to buy, but it's uneconomic. Yeah, it's the second highest item on our budget today, and there are cheaper ways of doing this. There's this concept of ultra small vehicles, where you just have a 1 or 2 person vehicle that drives around in a city, takes much less space, it's much less costly, and so it would bring transportation to us at a much more palatable price. Yeah? Then there is this idea of shuttles. Yeah? So we have these shuttles, and they are the most economic way of moving around, by the way. If you do the math, they are the most economic mode of transportation. But we haven't even started to explore what will we do if we drive in an autonomous vehicle. Yeah, you could take your commute and you could take the first conference call while you are commuting in a very nice environment. Or you can get your hair done or your nails done, or you get a massage on the way to work. And this is bringing services into the
Right.
transportation aspect. And we haven't even started to explore this. If I go to the Detroit Auto Show, I see the old same model that was designed about 100 years ago.
Well, and in fact, I think we're in this period where it's working the opposite way. The technology is allowing us to sort of retreat into ourselves, right? You said 1.1 per vehicle per trip. So people like to live in their little 2x2 boxes. And I think to Patrick's point is we have to change that mindset and to say, look, my car, which I try and get over 35 miles an hour, most of the time I can't, or I have to dodge potholes or deer in outside of Princeton, but it sits in the parking lot at the Bloomberg office for 11 hours a day doing nothing, right? And I think to Patrick's point is that mindset has to change.
Yeah. But I think the cities there will have a key role, and they have started to play it. So London put a fee for entering. I think Manhattan, New York mayor is considering putting a fee inside to just go through Manhattan below the 60th Street, and eventually on taxi rides as well to push people to ride sharing. So I think they push for that. On top of that, they spend a lot of money today subsidizing buses and so on and so on. So this is the situation is not satisfying. They spend a lot of money. So if we can't find a solution with a robotaxi that puts like 6 people, can take 6 people in lower density, that can take like 10, 12 people. So it's more a robobus, I would say small one. And eventually some pods like the famous Google 1-2 people pod, all together with heavy transportation that already exists or that is invested. You can lower the cost of transportation for everybody. You can make traffic much easier and faster for people, and you move, if they are electric, and they will be electric, you move pollution away, a lot of noise away, less accidents. So all that is a very strong social benefit. So I think today this is not clear in the mind of people voting, in the mind of city leadership. So it's hard to start to make decisions to make it move. But as soon as a few cities will have done that, that's going to become visible. And I think then the need to move is going to become much more tangible and much more effective in reality. So I really think that the technology needs to be there. Google looks like has it. The others are struggling to get it quickly. I think the funding will get there. I'm not too worried about that because the business case is good. Now the city leadership will have to make tough decisions. Forbidding cars to enter an area in a city or putting a fee is a tough decision for a politician. But because implementation is not like building a subway, you make decision 10 years after you get the benefit, and meanwhile you get trouble. if you introduce robotaxi, there is little things to do in infrastructure. So you can make the decision at the beginning of the politician mandate, get some trouble, get the benefit before the end of the mandate, and get re-elected. And so I think this dynamic could allow that to move quickly.
Go ahead, Andreas, why don't you make a last point?
My last point I want to make is I think the technological problem is nearly solved. We are very close at getting to a point where we have technology at our fingertips that will help us solve the problem, whether it's autonomous technology, whether it's artificial intelligence that projects where people are and want to go. But the core problem we need to solve is a societal problem. We need to be aware of the fact that our cities need to be designed for the people that live there and not for the mode of transportation. And I think that's the message I would want to leave with.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for the great work you do. Hope it continues. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and safe travels wherever you may be going.
Thank you.